Hello, everybody. It's Mike here at Game from Scratch, and today we are talking about Command and Conquer. Why are we talking about what is this? A 15-year-old RTS game from Electronic Arts? Well, that is because Command and Conquer Remastered Collection is about to be released in about 2 days, 3 days time. It will be out. It's available for pre-order now. So why am I talking about an RTS re-release? Well, the reason is it was open sourced, and I'm using that word, and I'm not 100% certain if I'm allowed anymore because the word open source versus source available is catchy, but this one is actually under the GPL v3 license. So, yeah, that's pretty much open source, but it is not the assets. This is the original game's source code, but you can use it to basically build DLLs that are then hosted by the new engine. So that's how games pretty much used to run quite often. Is your game was actually a DLL that would run in the game engine's executable, and Command & Conquer Remastered is no exception. And it was weird to be talking about open source and Electronic Arts together, but that's actually a little unfair because if you go over and look at Electronic Arts GitHub page, they've got things like the Electronic Arts Standard Template Library implementation, a version of STL for games that has become almost a standard among other people. And you can see here, there's actually 28 repositories they've got going on, but this new one is the source code for Red Alert and Tiberian Dawn. And what this is going to allow you to do is for modders to be able to create really elaborate mods that will be able to run in the newly updated or remastered engine. So if you are interested, the source code is now available. I was actually going to talk about this. This was announced about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, but they didn't actually release the source code. So I thought, you know what? I'll wait till the source code is actually available, and it is out now. So if you want to check it out, the source code is out there. As I mentioned earlier, it is in 2 repositories over on GitHub under the GPL license. There's Red Alert and Tiberian Dawn. I'm going to look at Red Alert as an example, and you're going to notice something. This is old school. This is old DOS 8.3 file names. So if you're wondering why these file names suck, well, that's why. These are it used to be a limitation of 8 characters on the left-hand side and 3 characters on the right-hand side. So this was quite literally the longest file name you could have in DOS back in the day. So there is some legacy aspects. Now, if you want to go ahead and jump into this code, where you're going to want to probably start is in, at least for this one, under the Conquer. So conquer.cpp and conquer.h seem to be the entry points. Now, one of the things that's really impressive with this code is if you actually dig into it. So we're looking at Conquer right now. It is 5,736 lines of code, but it's really, really well documented. So you're going to see here, everything is under the GPL license. You're creating ultimately Tiberian Dawn.dll or Red Alert.dll. Keep in mind, even though the source code is all available under the GPL licenses, the assets are not. So you still will have to buy CNC Remastered Collection or the new version, or maybe the old version. I'm not sure if this will work with the old version. I can't see why not. But you're going to need to buy a version of the game to make it work. This isn't really that dissimilar to the way that it works for the Doom source license. It's available under the GPL license, but they don't ship the data. So you either need to grab the demo version or the full version of the product to make things work. All right, so that is where we're at. As I mentioned earlier on, this code is very, very well documented. And you can see here how things are broken down, all the various different functions that are available. And where you want to probably start is main game and main loop. Now, main game, okay, well, here we'll go to main loop instead. So main game is, all right, let's do main loop because I've already got it highlighted for some reason. Here, main loop. This is your game loop. This runs over and over and over while your game is running. So welcome to old school way of writing C code. It's actually, again, it's really well documented and clean code. So there's actually, even if you have no interest in modding, you can see how a professional, A quality commercial game was written, and it's well documented. And a lot of this stuff really doesn't change over time. But you can see here is what happens basically every frame. This is the logic to determine how things are done. And this loop runs over and over and over again, basically until the game exits. So here you can see, kind of keeps going and going. At the same time, we find main underscore game. And this is your program's entry point. So this is where things start, where the initialization happens, and so on. So if you want to jump into the code and try and figure out where things go, where things come from, how things work, those are probably the 2 areas you want to start with. Main game is the entry point where code is set up, and you will notice main game actually calls main loop. So your DLL is loaded by the engine. The engine itself causes or creates a main game. Main game sets up all of the variables, etc., that are specially needed to run the game code, and then it goes into main loop code, as you can see right here. And main loop literally just runs until it's done, at which point the game is done, the shutdown happens, and end of life. So that's kind of where you would go, and the rest is going to be detail specific. Like all the logic for handling games and so on. And again, there is a repository for each. So there is a repository for the Red Alert game, and there's going to be a repository for Tiberian Dawn as well. I actually don't know if it's called Conqueror as well on the way in. Yeah, it might be. All right, so it looks like its entry point stays the same. So if you want to jump in and figure out where things start, that ultimately is the entry point. So some interesting code to check out. I haven't got into a whole lot of detail. The biggest thing that I really appreciated here, again, was the level of commenting. So if you just kind of want to look at someone else's code, and that's why I always cover these, even if it's a 15-year out of date kind of code release, there's always something that can be learned from reading someone else's professional code. This is code that literally shipped and ran on millions of computers. And so at the very least, it could be ugly at times, but it got the job done. And that's always something that is worth looking at. So kind of cool that it's EA of all people doing this release. And there's other projects out there for modding the Command & Conquer games, but it's nice to see like an official version. And it would also be nicer to see more and more of these big publishing houses release source code for older games, just so they continue and the communities can continue and they can continue to revive. And I'd love to see this with the remaster type stuff, because it does give, an additional incentive for people to pick up the remaster and be a community for it, but also getting the tooling and support they need from day one. So that is it. The source code for Command & Conquer, the two different renditions there, Red Alert and Tiberian Dawn, are both available up on GitHub under the GPL v3 license. Again, that does not include all the assets. That is just the source code. It also, coincidentally, does not include the engine. So this is just usable for actually, implementing DLLs that will be run within, I think it's called the Glyph engine. So just be aware that you can't adapt this code for something else, but you can learn things from it, and you can take those techniques into your own code. So hopefully it's useful to some of you, and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of EA in this case, because normally EA is a villain. In this case, not seeing too many villainous things here. Again, let me know what you think. Comments down below, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.